I wonder what your spiritual rhythm is. Do you attend a weekly Bible study? Perhaps you are in the habit of saying the daily office. When I was preparing for ordination, I remember always feeling slightly inadequate because as a then single parent of a young boy, I felt convinced that if you didn't attend to your spiritual life in particular ways, which were almost impossible for me at that time, your spiritual journey was in trouble. English theologian Paula Gooder came to my rescue, though, through her book Everyday God, where I discovered that it was okay if you found your spiritual rhythm in the less formally sacred time of digging in the garden. As a cradle Anglican, I was also relieved to hear from her that not having a spectacular conversion story was also quite okay, and having experienced a quiet, gentle companionship with God over my life rather than a dramatic conversion did not make me an inadequate Christian. It has always been in the garden that I have felt closest to God. In the beginning, God created a garden, and his relationship with his creation was in the garden, and we look forward to the new heaven and the new earth, where we are promised a garden city with a river of the water of life flowing through it, bright as crystal. As I sink my hands into the earth, it never ceases to amaze me that I am part of this extraordinary creation, and the tension of being insignificant while also being known and loved can rest easily for me there. Whether it's the garden of my suburban home, my childhood growing up on a vineyard, or the more intentional retreats to national parks, I feel at home with the birds and the plants and the dirt. I have always loved dirt. This is dirt from our family farm. I like to have it, not in my handbag. I like to have it with me, though. I like to have it near to me when I'm a long way from home. So I have always loved the dirt. I think I have always counted the birds as friends, and I think I have always experienced an awesome wonder at the creative power of our Creator God because of creation. So I have very little, nay, nothing at all, to say to you about our passage from Job, as it makes perfect sense to me. This is the way First Nations people see the world and God. But ask the animals and they will teach you, the birds of the air and they will tell you. Ask the plants of the earth and they will teach you, and the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of every human being. Indeed, in his hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of every human being. In nature, the tension of insignificance and of being known and loved can rest. In nature, we are reminded that we are part of something bigger than us, something that existed before we did and will exist long after we exist here. Aboriginal people have always understood this notion of being part of a created order. It is no mystery to us. Verse 20 of our Romans passage confirms this clearly. Ever since the creation of the world, his eternal power and divine nature, invisible though they are, have been understood and seen through the things he has made. But our Romans passage is the reality of the world around us now, the antithesis of our passage from Job, where we looked at the world and saw our awesome God. We've moved away and we've traded God. We've traded our worship and thanks for idols. Creator of Gaia, Luke Jerram, reminds us that it is only in the last 50 years that humanity has been able to see Earth from space, and yet us blackfellas have felt its mountains and rivers coursing through our veins, have known its natural topography as if from an aerial perspective, and have been part of country from time immemorial. We have not needed to see it from space for it to cause stillness in us, or for us to know the majesty of the Creator. Jerram hopes that when people come and see Gaia, they will notice the beauty and fragility of our planet and be reminded that it's our only home and that we need to look after it. I hope that too, because things are getting desperate. Unless we all make small changes and demand our governments to make large ones, the consequence of our inaction is going to become more severe. Perhaps that's also where we can learn lessons from First Nations Australians who understand that you don't take more than you need from the earth, and you give it time to recover and rejuvenate. But I also hope that when people see Gaia, our Romans passage will resonate and they will see plainly what can be known about God and what God has shown them, seeing his invisible eternal power and divine nature through the things he has made, and then giving him honour and thanks. This is not an easy passage to sit with. Sin is not a very sexy topic, and we are uncomfortable even mentioning the wrath of God. But C.S. Lewis reminds us in Surprised by Joy that divine punishments are also mercies, and particular good is worked out of particular evil, and the penal blindness made sanative. The idea of God's wrath is always open to misunderstanding, because we too easily think about human anger. Human anger is sinful, hurtful, impulsive, and selfish. But God's anger is only righteous and only works against all that is wrong and unjust and wicked in the world. We might feel uncomfortable thinking about God's wrath, but being uncomfortable isn't a bad thing. We learn and grow through discomfort. We discover patience and endurance. We discover passion and mercy. Sin has separated us from God, and the emptiness we feel having exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images leads us to try to fill ourselves rather than having God fill us, and sees us create ourselves according to images and idols. And so we see people loving trees more than God, instead of loving trees because they love God. We see people loving themselves more than their neighbour, instead of loving their neighbour as themselves because they love God. We see people loving creation more than God, instead of loving creation because they love the Creator. And then somehow, as we become more and more self-obsessed and self-absorbed, we see people afraid to say sorry in case they are blamed for everything. At school on Friday, when I was on yard duty, a child in Year 1 came over to me upset because she had been knocked on the playground. I took her over to the other child and we had a little chat. At school, we teach children to say sorry even if it's an accident, because we are sorry that the other person is hurt. We teach children to empathise and feel sadness at someone else's struggle or misfortune without having to feel personal guilt for their situation. It is no different when we consider Aboriginal reconciliation or the plight of our environment. We might not have caused the division or the destruction, but we have been part of a world that has caused it, and what we do matters. If we do nothing, it matters. If we do small things, it matters. When you look at Gaia, what does it inspire in you? I can't help but think of the hymn, How Great Thou Art. When I, in awesome wonder, consider all the worlds thy hand has made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. I have always loved dirt. With my hands in the dirt, I know that I am insignificant in this world, but that what I do matters because I am also known and loved. What we do matters. How we care for each other matters. How we care for our world matters. How we seek reconciliation with others and for our nation matters. You matter. Amen.